This actually is one of the highlights of the Comp Laude. You're going to hear 6 excellent speakers. You would have heard a 7th, but David Langham is stuck in Pensacola dealing with Hurricane Michael. So he was not able to make it here. So I think, Greg, that means everybody else gets 15 more seconds. But this is a great opportunity here from some excellent folks. If you're familiar with TED Talks, it's something like that. Gives them 6 minutes, no props, just be able to present interesting content from their perspective. I want to thank Gallagher Bassett for sponsoring People's Choice. This is a big part of what they do, and I want to, without further ado, introduce Greg McKenna, a great buddy of mine, one of the most nicest people that you'll ever meet. So if you haven't met Greg yet, definitely do that. He is the Senior Vice President for External Affairs at Gallagher Bassett, and he will be your MC for this event. So give Greg a big round of applause.
Good morning. In the summer between my 2nd and 3rd year of law school, I took a class called Trial Advocacy. And for most students, this was the first taste of practicing law. So the class huddled in the ceremonial courtroom back at Loyola in Chicago. And in walks Professor Frank Covey. His suit immaculate, his white hair perfect. And he leaned into the microphone and he said, "This course is not for everybody, but if you can pull all of your prior knowledge, your common sense, your creativity, when you're done, you'll have all the tools necessary to send a guilty man to prison or an innocent man free. But before we do any of that, I'm going to give you the number one rule about being a trial attorney." And just then he kind of stepped away from the podium and he fixed his cufflinks and he stared at every nervous student in the class. He said, "The number one thing that you got to do, you got to master this skill. You got to practice it. Every trial attorney knows you got to start with a story." You know, from Once Upon a Time to It Was a Dark and Stormy Night to In the Beginning, we're hardwired to listen to stories. Stories captivate us, and they bring us into a powerful relationship. And so it's a great privilege for me to be here and join all of you at the Comp Laude Gala, to share the stage with these excellent finalists here at the People's Choice, and to once again honor the memory of David DiPaolo with the 2018 People's Choice Awards. I've said this before, this is fast becoming the most important hour of our year. This morning we're going to feature 7 stories, 6 speakers, of our industry's most influential storytellers. I'm going to introduce you to each of them in turn, and I'm going to be your guide and host. Each of our presenters will tell their story. At the end of the session, you'll have an opportunity to text to vote to establish this year's winner of the People's Choice Award, which will be announced later on tonight. You know, David understood that stories have the power to connect us through shared experience. They literally give us our humanity, and they describe our culture. At an atomic level, you know, neurologists at Harvard have established that when you take the MRI of a storyteller and the listener, the readings are the same. Talk about a connection. And at a more macro level, stories are our basic unit of cultural experience. My wife and I were married on September 1st, 2001, and we were fortunate enough to have a 9-day honeymoon in Italy. So, on the morning of September 11th, she and I were 1/3 across the way of the Atlantic Ocean when the pilot came on the PA. And he said, "The Air Force has ordered us back to Milan. There is extreme terrorist activity on the eastern seaboard of the United States." Tension immediately rose. We felt scared, confused, and completely isolated from the rest of the world. Because of the distance of the flight and the time of the event, we were the last plane in the air as we headed back towards Italy. For the next 4 days, the crew and the passengers stayed together in what was a beautiful hotel on Lake Maggiore. I mean, this beautiful setting juxtaposed against this awful cauldron of emotions as to what was happening. So on the 15th of September, we all went back and we made for the airport. And we got on the plane, and the pilot came on again. He said, "Everyone, breathe. We're in this together. Reach across the aisle and introduce yourself to your fellow passengers. Share your emotions and tell your story. We're connected now." These kinds of things, everybody of a certain age, of a certain being here has a 9/11 story, and we're connected in that. And that's how stories operate. The stories you're going to hear this morning come from all aspects of our industry. They will inspire you, motivate you, transport you, and they're going to challenge you to think differently about our industry. Because that's what stories do. You see, stories are not the map, they're the compass. They guide us so that when we come upon a new situation, we'll know how to act. 2 weeks ago at our office in Rolling Meadows, Gallagher Bassett had a great opportunity to invite the past 3 presidents of our company to our new building. And so Jack Campbell and Pete Turkowski, and as some of you may know, my father, Rich McKenna, came for lunch and a fireside chat of sorts. I was fortunate to be a part of it. As these men told the stories of the foundation of our company, and really sort of the stories that give the corporate culture its life. In one particularly moving segment, my father talked about his final visit with Bob Gallagher. Bob was one of the founding members of the Gallagher family that began Gallagher Bassett. Rich was the last non-family member to see Bob in the hospital. A weekend, and in the hospital bed, he grabbed my dad's lapel and he pulled him closer and he said, "You want to know what the secret to the claim service industry is?" And Rich was like, "Bob, you've run the race, rest." He said, "There are no shortcuts. Never forget the quality." So when any of us are putting on a presentation or an educational session or going to a CE or establishing a new quality initiative or bringing claims to a new line of business, we don't just pay lip service to quality. No, we're following a mandate from one of the founders, one of the inspirators. Stories are captivating, connecting, and they're our compass. Okay, so we've arranged the next hour of our presentation to match a traditional story arc. In front of you is a note card and information about the presenters. In your bag, you have a notebook, a journal, that we encourage you to take notes. Start your submission to this session's, the 2019 session, start it today. As you're going to find out, each one of these stories is a composed, complete thought. But what's been really rewarding to me as I've worked with our speakers is that when we assemble these presentations, you're going to find out that each one of them actually highlights a critical part of the entire storytelling process. So at the end of our session, all of these stories will have contributed to a narrative structure and they're going to serve as a model for you as you begin to tell your story. So let's get started.